Well, today is the final video and the final readings for this semester. Tomorrow, you guys are off. We're off next week, which is Holy Week by the time you see this. And the only thing I'm asking you to do next week is to read Luke 24, which is the chapter that tells of the resurrection of Christ. We end Luke 23 today with Christ placed in the tomb. But I want to talk a little bit about what we're reading today in 1 Kings. Later, Solomon formed an alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt, by marrying his daughter. First of all, we begin with that. He marries the daughter of the Pharaoh of Egypt. One of the things that happens in Solomon's life, which we get into next semester if you join me in the fall, is he is influenced too much by the various women he marries who are not Jews. And here he forms an alliance with Pharaoh, with Egypt, which is, of course, the place that the Jews came out of. And Egypt typically represents sort of the place of sin and slavery. So it's interesting that right at the beginning of King Solomon's story, we hear about this political marriage to Pharaoh's daughter. But then we also hear Solomon brought her to the city of David, Jerusalem, until he had finished building his palace and the house of the Lord, as well as the wall around Jerusalem. So he builds a palace. This palace later, as far as I know, is the same palace that Pontius Pilate sort of appropriated when he was governor, which would have been 1,000 years or so after this. I could be wrong there, but I think it's the same one. And he builds the temple, the first temple. This is the temple that gets destroyed maybe 300 or 400 years later by Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians. And then another temple is built after the Jews are exiled. And then they return from their exile in Babylon, and a second temple is built. And then that one gets destroyed by the Romans in AD 70. Meanwhile, this is Solomon building the first temple. The people, however, were still sacrificing on the high places because a house for the name of the Lord had not yet been built. And Solomon loved the Lord and walked in the statutes of his father David, except that he sacrificed and burnt incense on the high places. I think that implies that Solomon is hedging his bets. He's building a temple for the worship of the one true God, but sacrificing on the high places. Usually that phrase implies in the Old Testament sacrificing to other gods. I didn't look this up on Bible Hub, though, so maybe the commenters have a different take on that, but I think we're not so sure. And yet Solomon asks for wisdom. And of course, the story of the baby is famous. You guys may not know it, but the story of Solomon judging properly with the baby, one of the most famous stories in the Old Testament, and in fact, outside of the Old Testament. But I wanted to point out one more thing. When Solomon is praying for wisdom, he says to God, "Your servant is here among the people. Your servant is here among the people you have chosen, your chosen people, a people too numerous to count or number." I think this is a key to the bizarre census story, where David demanding a census of the people is considered a terrible sin. I think the hint here is that not only should you not count your chickens before they're hatched, but the people of God are too numerous to count or number, which is what God had promised Abraham many years prior, that if you count or number these people, you are appropriating something of the mystery of God. And God is saying, I'm going to multiply my people so much that no one can count them. And if you try to, apparently, in the census story, that's my, never mind. If you try to number the people in the census story, maybe it's a sin because of that. That's what some of the commentators say. I think they're probably onto something. Meanwhile, we read the end of Revelations. We read Jesus placed in the tomb. I put in review Jeremiah. That just means you guys can go over and look at it if you want to. But at any rate, we've reached the end of this semester. Some of you I know won't come back. Some of you will. I hope you guys have learned a bit and enjoyed it. And as you can see, there's a wealth of information in the scriptures, not just about God, but about life, really about people. is we see how people behave. Normally, it's in a pretty despicable way because that's really who we are and why we need a Savior. So, anyway, you're going to read off next week. We're going to meet one more time. Here's your final assignment. Read Luke 24 during Holy Week and come up with one question that you will submit. One question about anything we've studied this semester or anything else. I mean, it shouldn't be what's the capital of North Dakota. It shouldn't be something you could look up. You can ask me about me, my faith. You can ask me about anything we've studied. You can ask me about anything else in scriptures or in church teaching or whatever. Just come up with a question, and I'll try to get through everybody's questions when we meet, which will be the Monday after Easter. So have a good break, and I'll see you guys in a little over a week.